Nutty Putty Cave. John Edward Jones was a 26-year-old medical student and experienced caver who decided to explore the Nutty Putty Cave in Utah in 2009 with his family. While navigating a notoriously tight and unmapped section known as the Bob's Push, John made a critical mistake. He crawled forward into an opening he thought was a tight squeeze, but actually led into a near-vertical blind crevice that was only 10 by 18 inches wide. As he slid downward, he realized too late that the tunnel did not open up. He became pinned completely upside down at a 70-degree angle, with one arm pinned underneath him and the other forced backward. His brother tried to pull him out by his calves, but John only slid deeper into the tight fissure, wedged tight at the hips. When rescuers arrived, they realized the situation was incredibly grim. John was stuck over 400 feet from the cave's entrance, deep within a labyrinth where maneuvering heavy rescue equipment was impossible. For over 27 hours, a team of more than 100 rescuers worked tirelessly to free him. They set up a complex pulley system anchored into the cave walls, hoping to hoist him backward out of the slot. At one point, they managed to lift him just enough to give him some food and water. But then tragedy struck. A rescue anchor snapped out of the brittle rock wall, causing the pulley system to collapse. John dropped right back down into the crevice, wedging himself even tighter than before. As the hours passed, the immense physical strain of being upside down began to take a massive toll on his body. His heart had to work incredibly hard to pump blood away from his brain and back up through his lower limbs, eventually leading to cardiac arrest. John passed away inside the crevice. Because the extraction process was deemed far too dangerous for rescuers to attempt again, the decision was made to seal the cave permanently with concrete, leaving John's body inside as a final resting place. Floyd Collins was an American cave explorer who became national news in 1925 after getting trapped in Sand Cave, Kentucky. Floyd was searching for a new cave entrance that would attract tourists when he crawled down a narrow, rocky passage. On his way back out, his foot accidentally struck a large 7-ton boulder, causing it to shift and pin his left leg firmly in place. He was trapped 55 feet below the surface, jammed inside a cold, wet passage that was barely wide enough for a human body. Rescuers quickly located him, but the rescue operation became an absolute nightmare. The passage leading down to Floyd was so incredibly cramped that only one person at a time could crawl down to reach him, and they had to work entirely with their hands or small trowels. For several days, rescuers were able to bring Floyd food, water, and blankets to keep him alive while they tried to figure out a way to break the rock pinning his foot. The story exploded into a massive media sensation, drawing thousands of onlookers, journalists, and vendors to the site, creating a carnival-like atmosphere above ground while Floyd suffered in total darkness below. On the 5th day of the rescue attempt, another disaster occurred. A massive portion of the cave ceiling collapsed right above the passage leading to Floyd, completely blocking him off from the rescue team and cutting off his supply of food and air. With the original tunnel completely impassable, engineers decided to dig a brand new vertical shaft straight down from the surface to reach him. The digging took days of grueling, slow labor through unstable dirt and rock. By the time rescuers finally broke through to Floyd's position 17 days after he first became trapped, it was too late. Floyd had already succumbed to exposure, starvation, and dehydration just days prior. Plura Cave. The Plura Cave system in Norway is a beautiful but incredibly deadly underwater cave network that claimed the lives of 2 Finnish divers in 2014. A group of 5 experienced cave divers set out to perform a deep through dive from one entrance of the cave to another, a journey that required navigating dark, freezing waters at depths of over 130 meters. Trouble began during the return leg of the dive when one of the divers, Jari Hutarinen, became severely entangled in a safety line while negotiating a highly technical, narrow restriction deep underwater. As he struggled to free himself, his equipment malfunctioned and he began to panic, consuming his breathing gas at an alarming rate. His diving partner tried desperately to rescue him and cut him free, but Jari tragically drowned right there in the narrow passage. The partner, now running critically low on gas and suffering from the onset of decompression sickness, had no choice but to leave his friend's body behind and continue his long ascent to the surface. Further back in the cave, a second diver named Yari Usemaki came upon the blocked passage. Seeing his friend's lifeless body blocking the narrow path, panic set in, causing him to breathe too fast, which led to carbon dioxide toxicity. He also passed away underwater. The remaining 3 divers managed to survive the grueling multi-hour decompression process and escape to the surface, but they were deeply traumatized. Weeks later, the Norwegian government declared a formal recovery mission too dangerous and called it off, sealing the cave. Refusing to leave their friends behind in the dark, the surviving divers and a team of trusted colleagues secretly returned to the cave a few weeks later. They conducted an incredibly risky, unauthorized recovery mission, successfully bringing both bodies back to the surface so their families could bury them. Sterkfontein Caves. Peter Verhulsel was an avid scuba diver who met a slow and agonizing end inside the Sterkfontein Caves in South Africa back in 1984. Peter was exploring the underwater tunnels of the cave system with a group of friends when he ignored basic cave diving safety protocols and decided to swim past a designated safety line into an unexplored, murky tunnel. He quickly became separated from his diving partners as the visibility dropped to 0 due to kicked-up silt. Lost and completely disoriented in the labyrinth of pitch-black underwater passages, Peter frantically swam through the tunnels looking for a way out until his dive tanks ran completely out of air. By an absolute stroke of luck, he managed to surface inside a small, dry, underground air pocket that was completely hidden deep within the cave system. While he was safe from drowning for the moment, he was trapped in total darkness, miles away from help, with absolutely no way to navigate back through the underwater maze to the surface. Outside, a massive search and rescue operation was launched, with elite divers scouring the vast network of underwater passages for days. However, the cave system was so complex and expansive that rescuers couldn't locate the specific chamber Peter was in. Peter survived in that pitch-black, freezing cavern for an estimated 3 weeks, surviving purely on stalactite water dripping from the ceiling. With absolutely no food, the extreme cold and starvation slowly wore his body down. When rescue divers finally discovered the remote air chamber weeks later, they found Peter's body lying on a ledge. He had kept a diary written in the sand and on a small scrap of paper, documenting his final, agonizing days of waiting in the dark for a rescue that never came in time. Mossdale Caverns. The Mossdale Caverns in Yorkshire, England became the site of the worst caving tragedy in British history in 1967. A group of 6 young, highly experienced cave explorers set out to explore the deep, unmapped recesses of the cavern system on a warm summer day. The Mossdale system is notorious for its extremely long, tight crawls, where cavers must wiggle forward on their stomachs through narrow, muddy trenches for hours. While the group was deep inside the furthest reaches of the cave, a sudden, violent rainstorm broke out on the moors above. The massive influx of water quickly overwhelmed the moorland streams, sending a torrential flash flood roaring down into the cave entrance. Inside, the 6 young men were completely unaware of the danger until the water levels inside the narrow, muddy trenches began to rise rapidly. Because they were positioned in a low-lying, extremely cramped section of the cave, they had absolutely no way to retreat fast enough against the rising torrent. The water completely filled the tunnels, trapping the 6 cavers in a subterranean death trap where they all drowned. The next day, when the floodwaters finally began to recede, rescue teams entered the cave and found the bodies of 5 of the cavers pinned together at the end of a flooded tunnel, while the 6th body was located a short distance away. The rescue teams determined that attempting to extract the bodies through miles of incredibly tight, winding, and dangerous mud passages was far too risky and physically impossible without putting more lives in danger. With the consent of their families, the cave was permanently sealed and the bodies were left where they lay, turning the deep cavern into a permanent underground tomb.